audible, but you can begin.
Yes, sir. So actually, I'm working in Weldtech Engineering College from Chennai, sir. From my batch students, I joined, the 3 members have joined, Sagar Kumar, some other students. How can I approach the project, sir? So how to, we have some problem, how to develop the project and approve the project. So unfortunately, I didn't attend the class, attend the session yesterday. So today only I started the message and attend the classes, attend the webinar.
Sorry, Vijayaraj, can you just speak again? There was a little bit noise, so I couldn't hear you in totality.
Sir, actually, I'm working Weldtech. Yes, I'm working Weldtech College, sir, from Chennai. Weldtech University from Chennai. So my voice audible now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sir. So from my students registered to project, 3 students registered, like Sagar Kumar, some other students. So how to develop the project? Any material are available regarding blockchain technology? So I'm also handling blockchain technology from my class, for my university.
Sure. You can build your project on vaccine technology on the platform which I have just now shared with you all. So go ahead and register on that particular platform. Try to look into yesterday's recording. You will get a lot of information there. As well as today, we will have certain sessions which will give you direction about how to build your how to build your project or how to build your dApps on top of blockchain. Specifically Hyperledger Fabric and Ethereum. Okay.
Only from the Fabric ledger, sir, or any other platform can able to, sorry, Ethereum or a smart contract or a
Ethereum is also available. You can do it on Ethereum or Hyperledger Fabric. Both are available. So
sir.
Just have a look at the today's session. Go and watch yesterday's recording, and a lot of your doubts will be cleared. Otherwise,
Yesterday's session also available, sir, in video.
Yeah, it is available. So Mac, have you shared out the recordings to everyone?
Yes, Ajay, we did.
Probably in your inbox, you would have received the recording over the Zoom what happened yesterday. So please go through those recordings. You will have a lot of understanding, as well as whatever link I have just now shared. Go ahead and register on that particular platform. We will giving you early access. The platform itself has a lot of details around. So there is a lot of details around forum and everything. As soon as you take a login, you will be able to understand a lot of things.
Yeah, okay, for sure. Thank you.
And all other teammates of yours has joined today?
I informed some students are having class now. So maybe we join, we'll take that.
Okay, in any case, then we will share the recording.
Yeah, okay. So from my side, that's all.
Okay.
Can I mute, sir?
I'm just sharing the links with you all again.
Yeah. I will. Thank you, sir. So can I mute, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead and. So we'll wait for a few more minutes. I see still few people joining in. So till then, if anybody has any other question, please feel free to ask. So all of you guys will get the recording by default. All these things are getting recorded, and by default, you will get the recording on the same email ID through which you have registered for the session. Or you have registered for HackDLT, to be very precise. We'll get these recordings shared on the same channel. Okay, so let's start. So basically, what I will like you all to do is to go ahead and yesterday we were not able to share the link due to certain unfortunate circumstances. Few of our guys were ill, few of our peers were ill, so they could not go ahead, and so there was a loss in communication. But today I think we have shared the forms with you, and also we will extend the deadline on which you have to submit your idea. So please take time, decide on the idea which you want to work, decide on the problem which you want to work, and go ahead and put all those details. We will be also sending out the Teams, MS Teams invites for you as a collaborative platform in next 2 hours. There are a few people with whose details are a little bit not with us, especially the team leads who have registered their teammates. At times they have not written the first name or the last name, or so there are certain discrepancies where the certain email IDs are missing. We will reach out to those people separately, but as far as whoever's email ID is currently with us, we are going to share out those details over MS Teams and take this collaborative opportunity to interact, think about or collaborate within yourself. You're still not able to find the team, to go ahead and solve a problem with the team itself. And if you have any doubt, we can spend next 10-15 minutes on thinking about what are the problem statement where you can work, what are the problem statement for which you can provide solutions to. So feel free, if anybody wants to speak something, raise their hand, we will bring you front. Otherwise, if not, I will try to give you certain ideas around what you can build and what you should build. Yeah, Bhanu Prakash, go ahead. Or Rajdeep, go ahead. Rajdeep. You can unmute yourself, Rajdeep. Okay, so if you all do not have, I will try to give you certain solutions. So see, one of the very important thing about blockchain, right, is it removes the middleman. It removes or brings the trust into the system. So in current scenario, wherever you are seeing that there is certain body or there is certain actors, which is there to just to provide trust to that particular place. So those are the places where blockchain can be applied by default. So you need to figure out these scenarios, these situations. So one of the scenario and situation can be background verification thing, right? So in a background verification, currently what happens, your college in general, if you see, there are main 3 actors. One is a college or university who issues you certificate or your mark sheet or your transcripts. And you as an participant or you as an student receive those things. So these two become one of the 2 major pillar in this or actor in this particular ecosystem. Other actor are the person where, or the company or organization where you go and for employment and you submit these certificate. In order to verify the validity or in order to verify the authenticity of these certificate or mark sheet or anything, the organization needs to verify it or done a background verification on you. So generally, if process would have been streamlined, the organization could have directly interacted or called your company itself and find out whether these things are valid or not, whether these things are verified or not. But since the process is not very streamlined, there is a lot of distrust into the system, and as an organization does not trust you by default. What it does is they are required to hire a third party in order to does these verification done. So if in a blockchain world where by default trust comes into the picture from the system itself, these middlemen can be removed. So you can build a system of certificate verification, or you can build a land registry or land record where also these kind of issues occur, also where there is anything related to ownership or provenance of thing, how to prove that this particular thing belong to some person XYZ. So these are all the important area or consideration where a blockchain application can be built. Other important area and consideration can be wherever there is a lot of data sharing required, and a lot of different organizations are required to share data between them. Again, so if you go by default on the current system which kind of exists, generally the sharing does not happen on a real time. Anybody requests for a data share from a different organization, they will get provided a dump of data after doing data sanitization, that you are not losing any competitive advantage. You are not sending any data which may have certain information which may lose your competitive advantage, or which may you not want to share. So generally there are always batch processes where somebody goes and munch the data, pull out the data, and then do certain data massaging over it, and then those provide this data to the other organization. In fact, within the same organization, there are a lot of departments at times, and these all department needs to share certain data between themselves. But it is very difficult to have a real-time data share where there are issues around data privacy, where there are issues around data integrity aspect. And in order to remove these issues, or in order to make sure that these things are not there, generally there is always a process which is very cumbersome. So blockchain acts as a system where these seamless real-time data access can be given in a permission fashion. So it also depends upon, by default, if you talk about natively permission fashion, there are certain blockchain like Hyperledger Fabric, where there is a concept of where by default you can share the data in a permission fashion. But then there are certain other public blockchain layer where you need to build certain aspects into your programming. You need to build certain aspects in your chain code so that you are able to provide those data privacy, you are able to provide those data encryption. But at a very core, and every blockchain, one way or the another, you can achieve these things where you can keep your data private and still share it across to the concerned party for their consumption. Since it is not regulated by a single authority, a lot of organizations can come together to host a blockchain network. The issues around centralization, issues around that somebody would be going and fudging the data and doing any data manipulation get allayed, or do not have the same repercussion in current centralized world where an organization can go and manipulate data to any extent what they want and without anybody knowing. Since there are certain timestamping, there are certain ways in which natively blockchain store these data, and the blockchain name itself stems from the fact that these all data and transaction are firstly bunched together in a block, then they are chained together, they are linked together via certain hashes. And if somebody is coming from computer science background or somebody who has prior knowledge around hashing, they can easily correlate, or they can easily relate to the fact that if any even minute changes happen into the data set from which has been hashed, the hashing of the final output of the hash totally changes. So it is very difficult or almost near about impossible to actually go ahead and change these data sets, change these ledger of data on which transactions are recorded or your data are recorded. Other aspect where these all can be used in is in financial institution, trying to build an token system where so in a token system where those tokens have certain business logic inbuilt with them, there are certain vesting period or there are a certain vesting period where after those vesting periods are over, certain business function happens or certain business criteria gets fulfilled. These tokens can inherently have certain native value add to the system. So these are again are the certain ideas which you all can take. You all can take ideas around how to solve certain problem around self-governance, how to solve certain problem around government organization. One of the biggest problem is currently on the healthcare side, right? Like if you look into COVID, there was a lot of problem because there was it was very difficult to have a seamless flow of data. It was just very difficult to just find a hospital where beds were available. Why? Because at times those data were not available to public, or I will say there were no platform which were able to provide you an authentic and data with data integrity. Or if data was flowing, it was not flowing in real time. So in order to have such system built, it's very important that the rails or the underlying technologies on which the systems are built should have a trustless factor within itself, because it is a very humongous exercise to actually bring a third party and get it done throughout a country as big as India, right? There is always certain concerns around how those data will be managed, how your private data will not be leaked, how the third party which is coming into picture to manage all these will not have any malified or will not use those data in the way it is not intended to be used. So these are the very much considerations and concerns. So if you build a system on top of blockchain layer itself, since the trust comes by default from your network, trust comes default from the technology itself, you do not require any third party. Then you can build certain, so blockchain have also a concept of smart contract or chain code, depending on what kind of blockchain you are using. They are generally called smart contract in Ethereum world, then they are called chain code in Hyperledger Fabric world. But ultimately, the underlying principles are same. They are a piece of program or piece of code which gets recorded in a distributed, in a decentralized fashion onto the ledger or onto the blockchain itself. So the code becomes the law. As like any data on blockchain, if needs to be changed, it requires participation from all of the all of the candidate to actually approve those data set, or not all, then majority is required in order to have those data changes implemented. So similarly, for any code to be changed, since it is decentralized, it will again require the majority of people to agree that, okay, these changes needs to be reflected. So that's where the transparency comes into picture. Nobody can go and change anything at the back end without letting everybody know. Whereas in a centralized system, that becomes very easy. Any body or any software program which is owned by a company, they can always go ahead and change things at will without you getting any idea what's happening. So again, so this healthcare sector is one of the very important field around COVID, around bed. Then there are other use case can be around healthcare, around same thing, but around managing of patient records. Then I've already talked about land registry, land record, or your college certificate or certification things. Then there can be things around, there are a lot of times when government issue tenders for auction or issue tenders for anybody to come and bid. There is always a concern how these tender processing happens, how these contracts are assigned, right? So these all can be built on top of blockchain, which will provide much more better functionality and better trustless system where transparencies are maintained, and it will be the more elegant solution what currently we are having. So if anybody has any question, any doubt around what type of idea can be submitted, what type of things can be submitted, please let me know. Yeah, Praful, you can go ahead and change the team name. That won't be much issue. But send out us also an email regarding what was your previous team name. So again, reminding guys, we have sent one link for early platform registration. Do register there. You will get a lot of details, a lot of tutorials on that particular platform. It also has a forum. Go and watch out yesterday's webinar recording to get a lot more idea around it. And from Monday onwards, we will be launching a series of learning sessions around blockchain, as there are a few people who does not have blockchain knowledge in totality. So for them specifically, we will be launching a series, and so that they can also learn and participate in this particular hackathon. One more thing which I will again like to repeat, which I did tell yesterday, do not treat this hackathon just as an place about winning or competing. Treat this hackathon as a place where you are going to learn, where you are going to build your foundational technology on top of blockchain, right? So feel free to use this particular hackathon. Feel free to use DL Unify as a platform to get you on the learning mode, and all the best. There will be next sessions which will be taken from our colleague, which will deep dive more into how to build a blockchain application, and probably it will give you a little bit more idea who are new to the blockchain space. What are the fundamental things which you will require to expedite in learning, and what things you already know which you can use. Sumit, you can add other panelists.
Yes, Ajay. So
1 or 2 more minutes if anybody has question. Yeah, please, Mac, go ahead.
Yeah, so to everyone, we have sent a couple of different emails. One would be having a document telling you how to register a DL Unify and the blockchain forum. The second, we also sent you a form which you have to fill in the details of you, your team members, and everything, just to ensure we are all on the same page. And shortly, you'll also be receiving a Microsoft Teams invite where you can join. It would act as a communication channel for now on. Right. Let me just add. So now we would have Mr. Saurabh Singh and Mr. Deepak Singh speaking about how to build building Hyperledger fabric dApps using DL Unify. Hi, Deepak. Hi, Saurabh.
Hi, Mac.
Yeah, hi, Mac, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Great. So as I mentioned, quickly, Deepak and Saurabh would be walking you through how to build dApps using, the Hyperledger Fabric for DL Unify. Over to you, Deepak and Saurabh. Everyone, in case if you have any doubts, feel free to keep it in the chat box, and we would be sending this recording, in 1 hour. I mean, post the session is done, we'll send you the recording to you directly to your emails. But however, in case if you have direct questions where you don't think you can type the whole thing, and there would be a little prolongated questions, feel free to raise your hand. I will unmute you, and any one of the esteemed panelists can speak on that. Thank you. Over to you, Deepak.
Thanks, Mac. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in. So basically, yesterday we covered more or less about the DL Unify platform and like the various tools and product it provides for building up a decentralized application over the blockchain. So there are different keywords which are getting introduced to you. So all these keywords are having different meaning.
So like we'll quickly walk one by one to each of these keywords and how they are related to blockchain, what is DApp, and how we are actually going to use different tools which are provided by DL Unify. And so all these things we'll discuss one by one. So basically the topic is like how to build a decentralized application, that is DApp, over Hyperledger Fabric. So DApp is nothing but a short acronym, or like short acronym for decentralized applications. So DApp is normally just an application which is running over the blockchain. So there are numerous types of apps which we daily build, which we daily use on our life basis. The apps which are present in our Android phones or in the iOS phones as well. So what happens? Those are just normal apps built on for different operating systems. But when we talk about specifically exactly about dApps, so one of the key feature about dApp is that they are purely based on blockchain. So like there are different key layers that would be provided to us, but like the core system, like where the data would be stored or where the transaction would be happening, that would be purely based on the blockchain. So like as mentioned earlier, blockchain could be like of any way, like be it permission blockchain or permissionless blockchain, or to simplify, we could say like since Ethereum is a public blockchain, we could say like it could be based on Ethereum, or we could say like it could be a permission blockchain as well. So when I say permission blockchain, it would be simply based on Hyperledger Fabric. And the second key feature for this is that generally what happens whenever we are building a dApp, it should be an open source project. So why open source? Because this gives an opportunity to other developers and other users as well, who can, come in and pitch in to their different ideas for the existing system which we have built. But this also depends on like what kind of blockchain we are choosing. If we have chosen Ethereum blockchain, that simply means since it is a public blockchain, right? There everybody can come in, pitch in with their ideas, pitch in with their logic, and decide the business logic of that particular thing which we are doing. So there is a question in between. So Shivang, like, can we teach about how to make Ethereum contract? Probably we'll discuss about the Ethereum contract in one of the next session we would be having. So we'll discuss about that thing a bit later. But yeah, like we would be having sessions about those things as well. So yeah, as I was talking about the dApp, right? So yeah, that depends like what kind of blockchain we are choosing. If we have chosen public blockchain for building the dApp, then like everybody can come in on the platform and pitch in with their ideas and decide the business logic of the system which we are going to build, right? But if we have chosen Hyperledger Fabric, that simply means like there would be some, pre-decided parties who would be deciding the business logic of the system which we are going to deploy, which we are going to build. So like anyway, but like this is the core thing. Like whenever building a dApp, there needs to be that should be open source or that should be built on the blockchain. Like so that is inherently what kind of system the dApp would be using. That would be solely based on the blockchain. And like there are other keywords as well, like whenever we are doing any transactions on the network, then what happens, like generally we get a certain token from the blockchain which we are using, right? So that token is essentially a key thing that requires or that validates the user who's initiating the transaction on the network. So when we talk about Hyperledger Fabric, so what happens in the Hyperledger Fabric, every user gets a certificate from the certificate authority that we are using. So once we have a valid certificate with this, we can anyway like initiate a transactions on the network and do certain kind of things, whatever we want to. So this was like basic brief idea about the dApps, like what are dApps and how they are basically made of. And then the other keyword is Hyperledger Fabric. So as discussed yesterday, I just give you a 2-minute walkthrough about the Hyperledger Fabric. So basically a Hyperledger Fabric is a permission blockchain, and like there are a lot of keywords attached to it. So like how it is an important tool for the public space who started contributing in the blockchain space. So one of the key features is that it's based on open governance model. So why open governance model? So since it is supported by Linux Foundation, and there are various ecosystem as well who are thriving and put in their more efforts to make the system more sustainable and more achievable for the different end users who are consuming this product. And then there is a second point, which is also important. It is based on modular and configurable infrastructure or the architecture. So what happens? There are different modules which you could like plug and play with the current system, and you could initiate different kind of transactions on the network, or you could define the business logic for the system which you are going to build in. So there are different applications that could be built on Hyperledger Fabric, as like Ajay was mentioning about various things. one of the key things you mentioned about the healthcare system, which is like receiving a very highlight feature in these days because like COVID situation. So like there are different models that could be developed using this Hyperledger fabric, or like the system which you are building is up to you, like what kind of governance model you want to provide. And there is one more key feature to it. So the smart contracts or the chain code. So what happens when I say about the business logic, like suppose I'm developing a system that is simply responsible for a booking system, this kind of booking system, ticket booking system. Okay, so there needs to be some kind of logic associated with that system, right? So there needs to be do's and don'ts. Rules should be there, like what kind of seat could be booked, and like what is the cancellation policy, or like all those sort of things. So all those things would be written in a chain code, right, or the smart contract. And so these are like the key features. And generally, what happens when we talk about blockchain, there is idea automatically comes in our mind about the cryptocurrency. But the good thing about Hyperledger Fabric is that like it is happening in the absence of cryptographic mining operations. So you do not need to initiate or worry about any of the mining transaction that would be happening in the background. You just need to initiate a transaction, and there is no mining process attached to it. So like the transaction would be happening at a bit quicker rate, and like the throughput would be higher as well. So as mentioned, so we discussed about the dApp, we discussed about the Hyperledger Fabric. So when we say about dApp, there is one more thing which is essential. So you need to provide a way where user can interact with the application which you have built, right? So for that purpose, what we have front end associated to it, right? But the beautiful advantage of this Hyperledger Fabric dApps is that you could build a UI to interact with the platform on any language. So whatever language you are comfortable in, you can write that particular front end code for that thing. And there is this chain code or the smart contract. So the smart contract would be running on a peer-to-peer network. So let me share my screen, and I'll show you what simply I mean by peer-to-peer network. Just a second. Yeah, so Max, just let me know whenever my screen is visible.
Screen is visible.
Yeah, okay. So so as mentioned, this was our DL Unify portal, and so yeah, so this was DL, and this is our DL orchestration tool. So this tool is simply responsible for launching your network and configuring different kind of components that are essential for building a blockchain network. So as you could see, like this is one of the network which is running. So when I say that our chain code would be running on peer-to-peer network, that simply means that we would be deploying our chain code or our smart contract on these components which are existing for our Hyperledger Fabric blockchain network. So for understanding purpose, this is one of the peer node of our Hyperledger Fabric blockchain network. So when I say like our smart contract would be running on peer-to-peer network, that simply means we would be deploying our chain code on this container or on this node. So this is one of the nodes of the network. So these all the peer, order, couch, and the CA, right? So these are different components, but essentially these are the nodes of the network. So these are actually responsible for doing their sort of things, what they are responsible for whenever any user is making a transaction on the network. So peer is simply responsible for handling the chain code or handling the smart contract, and then as soon we move forward or as we initiate a transaction on the network, peer is responsible for validating the transaction which we are doing on the network. So this was dApp and the chain codes. Like normally what happens, like there are three things which we need to take care of: the front end and the business logic which we are designing, the front end, the chain code or the smart contract, and the network, Hyperledger Fabric network that we need, because that is like the essential key point when we say that I'm building a dApp. So there is normally not much of a difference between a normal application and decentralized application. The only core difference is that the decentralized application is based on the blockchain. So that is how it gives a supremacy above all the other applications which we are building. So now we'll quickly go through about all the features that we need to use of DL Unify portal for building a dApp. So so this was our DL Unify portal. So like as soon you register and take login on this DL Unify portal, you'd be having access to all these sort of tools. But now, since we are focusing on building our DApp on Hyperledger Fabric, we would be mainly focusing on DL Gateway and DL Orchestrator. So here, this is DL Orchestrator. So DL Orchestrator is simply a tool that is responsible for spinning up your network. So generally, what happens whenever we are setting up a blockchain network, there are a lot of things that would be happening in the background, or that you need to check on before committing to any user that the network is up and ready, or you can initiate a transaction on the network. So there are a lot of things in the background, like for example, you'd be creating infrastructure for this, you'd be installing the software stack, then you'd be starting up the network, then you'd be checking about the communication, whether all the nodes are able to communicate with each other or not. So all those kinds of things, these are the key features that you need to check before saying that, yeah, the network is up and ready and anybody could do those kind of transactions. So basically this DL orchestrator tool, this would be simply your tool that would spin up a network within 2 seconds, so that you could use different kind of components for initiating a network, for initiating a blockchain network, and then building a DApp over it. So this is like, so since there are some new users as well who are not able to join yesterday as well, so just I'll walk across to some of the key features. So like whenever you are doing the transaction on the network, you actually want to see that how that particular node is responding to the queries you are putting on the network. So for that particular thing, we have provided the logs feature. So here you could see like there all the logs which are going on the network, we could verify, or we could see actually those logs in here. So these are the details. So if you want want to search any keyword for here, right? Like you have written some kind of logic in your chain code, right? So, and you actually want to see whether that particular chain code is actually giving the output which you are expecting or not. Then you could search for any keyword, right? So suppose I search for the server keyword. So automatically those keywords would be listed over here. So this is the advantage of, you need not required to SSH on the server and then you bash it in the server and they check all the logs of the container. So that is like extra step that you need to take care of if you're not using any orchestrator tool. For matter of fact, that's here we are using the orchestrator tool. So this is one of the advantages. And like here, the option is also present to stop a node or to start node. So when you stop the node, there would be automatic an option present so that you can start a node. So I'm not stopping here a node because now sooner like you'd be initiating few of the transactions on the network. So this was all about, and here you could see the stats about the different container which we have launched on the network, like how the resource is getting used over the network. So here you could see like the 2.66 GB memory is getting used out of the allocated memory for that particular service. So all those things could be listed over here, and you could see like how your node is responding through the queries which you're sending on the network. So what happens? Suppose you send like bulk transactions on the network. So what happened? You could see like the IO of the machine would be going up, and a lot of the resources would be getting consumed. So this is for that purpose. So all in all, like there are a lot of tools like on this where you could verify each and every component. So that would essentially give you a feel of handling the blockchain network. So essentially, you would be the owner of that blockchain network. But since you have got a tool, DL or orchestrator tools, that would be handling all the operations for you in the background, and you need not to worry about all those sort of things that you need to take care of generally if you are actually managing a network. And here, this is options for generating a crypto link. So like if you are doing any kind of transaction on the network, so what happens, you as mentioned in the beginning as well, that there is a CA, right? That is certificate authority. So this authority is essentially responsible for providing a certificate so that you could initiate a transactions on the network. So from here you could download those certificates if you want to. So if there is a need that you want to actually consume those networks, you could get those certificates through this option. Okay, and yeah, so yeah, now I would be going to DL Gateway. Yeah, so as you can see now, we have created our blockchain network. Now we need to move on to the next step. The next step is that we need to write a chain code, and then we need to initiate that particular chain code on a blockchain network. So here comes the picture that how DL Gateway is going to be used. Okay, so before walking you across like how we are going to deploy chain code, I will just give you a glimpse of that, how actually we write a chain code and what we actually say that is business logic. So that is written inside a chain code. So I'll walk you across to one of the chain code which we have written just for the demonstration purpose, right? So if you see like the architecture which we are following, so here is the chain code, then we have front end and the middleware. So I'll go inside the chain code layer. So here you could see like there are different folder structure that we follow. So we have a different session as well where we'll be explaining about how to write a chain code or the basic things that we need to take care of while writing a chain code. We'll discuss more about those things in detail in that particular session, but here I'll just quickly over the top I'll go across the different features and different keywords which we need to take care of. So this is the folder structure that is in general supported by Hyperledger Fabric. So here inside this, there is one key file, authorized privilege.js. So what is happening over here? We have written our business logic in this. So you could see like whenever we are building any application, there are different kinds of operations that we are supporting, right? So for all those operations, we write a certain function that would internally be deciding that how query is getting handled, how transactions are getting processed on the network, what is the throughput time, or whether we need to verify any other. Suppose I'm booking a slot, or initially I mentioned about the ticket booking system, right? So suppose I'm booking a ticket. So if you think about for a very naive process, so what would be happening whenever you are booking a ticket? So internally, what would be happening? The system would be verifying your identity, right? This is the first thing that would be happening. If your identity is correct, then all seats would be getting listed over there. And if you're booking a right seat, then automatically your whole booking process would be getting completed, right? So this is just a very basic example of how things would be getting handled inside a chain code, right? So suppose I just take easy easy example of how things would be happening. Suppose here's the function create slot, right? So suppose here I'm the owner of the bus and I'm creating a seat or a slot that could be booked by the different user. So here you could see I'm just fetching a detail of the user and then the vehicle name and whether all seats are present over the system or not. And then accordingly, I've provided all the details from the chain code, right? So whatever details I've written in here, that could be automatically seen on the peer container, right? All the peer node which we are having. So there was a log window. Suppose whenever we are initiating any transaction on the network, so those transactions, so the chain of cycle would be in such a way, there would be front end, which would be giving you a platform to make a request on the system, right? And then there would be a chain code layer, right? And that chain code layer is nothing but your business logic that is running on a peer-to-peer network, right? So whenever we are making a transaction on the network, front end would be communicating with the chain code, and chain code would be giving you a response according to the business logic which we have decided. And if the request which we have made on the network is according to the rules which we have decided earlier, if that is fine, then accordingly the request would be fulfilled. So this was just a chain code file that like decides the rules about the system which we are developing, right? And then we have front end layer as well. So like this front end layer would be basically responsible for handling your chain code queries, or like giving you a platform for interacting from blockchain network to the UI which we have provided for initiating a transaction. So this is like the general idea of how things would be developing. But okay, so two things. We have developed a network. Okay, this was first thing. Second thing we have done, we have written a chain code, right? All the business logic, we have created that business logic to us. Now the third thing is that we need to use a tool that gives us the opportunity, or that gives us a free hand to deploy our chain code on the system, or gives us the tool that deploys our system chain code, or like the normal chain code as well on the blockchain network. There comes the picture of DL gateway. So now we'll go across the DL gateway and let's see that how can we actually use the DL gateway. So here you could see like there is option for creating a different project, and a lot of things are there. So as mentioned earlier, so I'll just create one node network. So just for quick understanding that how we would be doing the things. So I've written a HackDLT experiment song. Okay, I'm just using a Hyperledger Fabric, then I'm choosing a network. So this was the network which we were saying earlier on the DL orchestrator tool. So I've chosen the network, and then I could, create a new channel or choose the existing one. So since there are already channels present on the system, I'll use just one of the channels which are already there. So I've chosen this channel, and just I'm putting up the detail like which we are doing. So it's up to the user what kind of detail or the discussion they want to use. So I just created a project. So as mentioned, here we got an error, cannot create project with the same name. Why? Because in the same system, we have developed one more application that is actually using the same chain code, or like the name of the system chain code is exactly the same. So here we choose a different name. So these are the key features that we actually need to take care of while developing a chain code, because you cannot have a system where you are using a same name for deploying a chain code, because that would effectively, just for a normal purpose, you could take an example of a system. Suppose the Aadhaar card is there, right? So two users cannot have a duplicate Aadhaar card, right? Because that would create a bit of, there would be like a lot of problems if two users are having a same Aadhaar card number with them for themselves attached, right? So same kind of logic is also there in the components which you are deploying on the blockchain network as well. So everything needs to be different. So here I have created a project, and there is the project secret which I have got, right? So now this project secret is actually would be helpful for doing or initiating any kind of transactions on the network. So in the beginning of the session, we mentioned about the token system, right? There should be some token that verifies about the identity of the user, whether the user is valid or not, who's initiating the transaction on the network. So this is one of the way through which we are handling all those things. So like you need to provide this secret or the authorization token for using the different API which DL gateway is providing. So whenever you provide this particular secret in the background, your identity would be getting verified. So if the user is valid, then automatically your request would be going on the network. And if the identity is not valid, then whole transaction would be getting rejected, because obviously you are not a valid user and you cannot initiate a transaction from the network. So this could be used. So now I'll walk across the documentation purpose. So this is the key things which is essential. So there are previous projects as well on which we have initiated a transaction. So here we could see, right? So all those sort of transactions are there, which we have already done on this particular project. So whenever you start developing whenever you start doing all those transactions, there would be graph that would reflect the data or the analytics part that is getting handled for your particular project, right? So these are the statistics that is essential if you actually want to see how you are actually, using the network, how you're using different kind of APIs that the DL gateway is providing. So this is one of the essential feature for this. So now since we are focusing Hyperledger Fabric, I will be switching to Fabric documentation. So here we can see like these sort of get and post APIs are there. So this is the RESTful service, powerful RESTful service that is kind of a tech enabler for different user who wants to propagate different kind of transactions in the network. So here this is API for installing chain code, instantiating chain code invoke. So just keyword installing a chain code simply means you'd be putting up your business logic or the chain code on the peer network, on the peer node, right? Then instantiating a chain code, it normally means that you have deployed your chain code on system. Now you need to start executing that chain code. So whenever you execute that particular chain code, and if that instantiating chain code process is a successful part, then you could make transactions on the network. So normally, like all these APIs are there. So in a blockchain, what happens whenever we are doing a transaction on the network? So what is happening in the background? So there would be block that would be containing your details of the transactions, and those block would be getting mined in the blockchain, and that would be containing details of all the transactions which you are initiating on the network. So what happens? Suppose you have initiated a transaction on the network, and there are some details which are present in that particular transaction, and now you actually want to see or you actually want to show to the user like what exactly the data which you sent in that particular transaction, right? So for that, like there are different APIs like get block info by block. So what it does, like you need to provide the block number. So here you should see the username you need to provide, the block number you need to provide, and the channel name which we created. So in the just now while creating a project, we saw like when I was creating a project, right? Then I choose a channel name over there, right? So for a matter of fact, for demonstration purpose, I chose an existing channel, but there was an option as well where you could create a new channel. So here you need to provide the name of the channel and the name of the network. So like whatever transaction we are doing, that was happening inside one of the networks which we have created. right? So you need to provide these details, and once you could provide all these details, then like all the transaction would be visible to you, and you could see what was the data which you actually put inside that inside the blockchain network. So all those details could be fetched by these all these APIs. So there is like get transaction. So this was get block info by block number. So like there are a lot of blocks. So basically what is happening, like if I'm initiating a transaction, so since that is going on block number 1, so if I'm creating one more transaction, that would be automatically going on the block number 2. So this is just a simplistic process of walking across like how things would be happening, but there are a lot of other things as well that is going behind in the background. So but for a simplistic approach, so I've initiated first transaction, that will be mined on block 1. If I've initiated one more transaction, that will be mined on block 2, right? And these both the blocks will be connected to each other, right? Because this is a blockchain, right? So that chain needs to be there if we are saying the blockchain, right? So those sort of things are there that is happening in the background that the network is handling by itself, right? So if you want to fetch the information by block number, you could fetch the information by block. And whenever we are doing a transaction on the network, there is always a transaction ID attached to it, right? So that transaction ID is unique because suppose in the future, what you need to do, you want to fetch the response of a particular transaction ID which you did on the network. So there's the endpoint for that. Get transaction info by transaction ID. So here, what we need to do, all the parameters are same: username, channel name, and the network name. What extra parameter you need to provide, that is the transaction ID. So transaction ID you would be getting when you are initiating a transaction on the network. So so these are things that we need to take care while developing a dApp on Hyperledger Fabric using DL Unify. And I just walk you across one more thing, like how things are actually handled. So suppose like this is a simple chain code, which simple middleware layer that we have written to interact our UI with chain code, right? So here you could see like the chain code name is there, the network name, channel name, and username. So just now we saw in the documentation, right? So these are the parameters that we need to take care of while initiating a transaction from the network, right? So these are the things that we need to provide, and this is the connection URL, right? So in the DL gateway documentation, so here we saw like there should be API version where would be initiating a transaction. So whenever you do this DL Fabric, whenever you hit on this endpoint, you'll get the details on which you need to initiate your transactions. So this is a kind of a tool that enables you to connect your UI or the front end with the blockchain that is installed on the blockchain network. So these sort of things are essential when you are developing a decentralized application on Hyperledger Fabric using DL Unified tools. Okay, so here you could see like I have provided all those sort of details. Then I'll see one of the function that would be helpful. So here like I have written one of the endpoint, list all vehicles. So as the name suggests, list all vehicles would be just, giving us the details of all the vehicles that are present inside our system chain code or the user chain code which we have developed. So here just a simple way of like taking all the details from the config parameters. Then what we are doing here, we have to pass the connection URL, right? So connection URL was mentioned in the beginning, right? This is the connection URL. And since now what I'm doing, I'm using this particular endpoint, fab invoke chain code. So in the documentation, we saw that fab invoke chain code was one of the APIs that is essential for invoking or doing any new transactions on the network. So I'm doing just that. So here you could see like how DL gateway is coming to the picture. There are different, so we use DL gateway for installing and instantiating a chain code. And then once that chain code instantiation process is successful, we could use different endpoints that are provided to us. So all the logic which you have written, that entirely depends upon how you have actually written a chain code. If you have written a chain code that returns output in certain manner, then DL gateway would be processing that particular output and giving you in the exact manner that was written from the chain code. So whatever things we are writing in the chain code, that would be just, so DL gateway is just a handler of the different operations which we are doing on the network. So just understand it as a black box system. So here is the UI, here is the like these different endpoints that are provided to us. So we need to use these endpoints, and there is a box, the black box. Black box is nothing but the DL gateway tool that we are having with us. So that will be taking your request, processing in it, and that would be automatically sending over the blockchain network which we are having. And inside the blockchain network, we already know we would be having a chain code or the business logic which we have written that would be running on peer node. So that would be processing your query, and then that would be sending the output, right? And again, the DL gateway would be taking that output from the network which we are having, and simply it would be returning back the same things to the end user. So this is how the whole picture comes into the place. So also, like here we could see, so since this is one of the project which we created just now. So here is the option of instantiating a chain code. So as mentioned in the beginning as well, before instantiating a chain code on the network, firstly we need to make sure that we are having a proper chain code running with us. And when the chain code is running with us, we can deploy that particular chain code on the network. So even if like chain code is wrong, or like there are some issues with that chain code, normally the network would throw an error, like there are certain kind of parameters or certain logic which are not properly configured inside the chain code which you have written. So if there are those kind of errors, the network is already there to handle all those sort of errors, and that would automatically respond to the user as well if we are doing uh, certain invalid transactions or certain invalid logic inside the network or inside the chain code. So I'm just using this option, instantiating a chain code. So here we could see the browse option is there. So I've already written a file that I could use. So I've just used a zip file. So what you need, basically you need to provide a zip file of the chain code which you have written, right? And as discussed in the beginning, there needs to be proper architecture that we need to follow while building a chain code. So that would be shared with you all guys. So like uh, what kind of tool set when we are using those tool set, what kind of structure or the folder layer that we need to actually follow, so that the things will fall in place and would be actually able to deploy the chain code on the network. So I've simply chosen the zip file over here, and now I need to pass the chain code name. The chain code name, it depends on the end user what chain code name they want to use. So I'm using HackDLT deploy, something like that, anything. HackDLT deploy, I've chosen the chain code name. Then I need to pass the version. So if I pass something else, so automatically there would be an error thrown that chain code version should be all numbers without a space. So I'm choosing one so that I could also keep track of different version which I'm initiating on the network. So what happens? Suppose you have installed a chain code on the network, right? And then after some days or some more discussion, you want to actually update that chain code, or you want to update the logic behind the system which you have developed. So what you need to do, uh, first I'm instantiating a chain code. So these are parameters that depends like how the chain code is written from the end user. If there is function name that we actually need to provide while instantiating a chain code, we need to pass it here, and similarly the argument field as well. But for this particular chain code, I have not written any parameters that requires to be get initiated while or during the first step of this process. So I'm just passing it as a blank, or I'm just keeping this particular field as an empty field. So here I've written on the deploy field, right? So here you could see this bar is there. That simply indicates that in the background process, things are happening now. So this instantiation is broken into two parts. So first is the installation part, and then the instantiation part. So as we saw in the bottom right, so there was one log with us that said the chain code is installed, instantiation is in progress. So that simply means the chain code has been put up on the peer node, and now the things would be happening on the network that would be verifying whether the chain code which we are deploying are having prerequisite files and the folder structure that are defined by the Hyperledger fabric. If all those things are defined in the correct manner, then that particular chain code will be initiated on the network, right? So I'll let it happen in the background, because generally it takes around 30 to 40 seconds. So I'll let it happen. Meanwhile, I'll walk across the other things. So here you could see like there is option for instantiate chain code, and then we have update chain code. So as I was discussing 2 minutes earlier, that suppose you have build a system and you have written logic inside that system that how things would be happening. But after a certain period of time, you want to update those things, right? Suppose suppose I have built a system where I'm booking a ticket from station A to station B, and the fare for station A to station B, according to the logic, was 100 rupees, right? Now, since there is petrol increase that is happening on a daily to daily basis, right? So now I actually want to increase the fare of that journey as well. So what I would do, I'd make the changes in my chain code, and now I'll again update that particular chain code which I have deployed on the system. So here, this is option is spray update chain code. So here, what would be happening? Since there is one chain code which I've already used, authorized privilege. So, and here's the version is also present. So now if I'm updating the chain code with different logic or different parameters for booking a ticket or deciding the fare price, now then I can update the chain code on this particular system. So this is how things would be happening on the DL Gateway platform. And once you have updated your chain code, or once you have updated your business logic and deployed in on the PN node, now automatically whenever you'd be doing a new transaction, that would be coming or that would be verified according to the new business logic which you have decided, right? Now the previous logic which was there on the system, that would still be in a place, but that would not be used for your next transactions that are coming on the network. So this is how things would be happening. So here we could see, like, I deployed the chain code HackDLT deploy. So as soon as all the process was successful, here I got the version which I use for deploying the chain code, and here's the chain code, the HackDLT deploy. So now if I want to use, now if I want to do any kind of transaction on the network, I'll use the different API endpoints that are provided by DL Gateway, and I'll use this project secret, all the authorization token, and all those kind of details that are essential while initiating a transaction on the network. So those details are already present. Those details are already present inside the documentation which we have provided for Hyperledger Fabric. So from here you could like switch it back to Hyperledger Fabric documentation and the different layer that we are supporting. So that is how different things going to be used. And then there we have statistics section. So here you could see, like, when we were deploying our chain code, there were two things that are happening in the background. So install chain code and instantiate chain code. So here we could see in the API section that these two APIs were used in the background when we are doing all these processes. But like this is, you could install and instantiate your project using the UI of DL Gateway, or you could use the API endpoint that we have provided in the documentation. So it's up to the end user, but like, since we have developed this tool, is kind of a great utility to use it whenever we are, deploying a chain code, because it does not require you to do all those things in the background. You just need to prepare a zip file of your chain code and just simply put it on the network. So that would effectively verify all those sort of things. So I'll quickly show one of the applications which we have developed. So I'll see whether that is open or not. Yeah, so this is one of the system which we have developed. So you could see, like, here, this is one of the platform which is being used. Here you could provide a first name, last name, Aadhaar card, and then all kind of these details. So when I say there is a booking system in place, so as what should be the business logic, you need to verify the identity of the users who are initiating transactions or who are going to use this particular portal. So you need to verify all those kind of things, and then you could initiate a transactions on the network. So this is just the UI. So as mentioned, you could write a UI for connecting your chain code layer, for the end user. For that purpose, you could build a UI or the front end part, and as mentioned, you could write this particular UI in any language, whatever you want to. So, and also for the writing the chain code languages. So this is like one of the more advantages if you're building decentralized application on Hyperledger Fabric. So natively it supports Node.js, Java, and Golang for writing your chain code, right? So there are other blockchain as well that requires only specific technology for developing dApps. But for Hyperledger Fabric, this is the utility, or this is the key feature that we are having, that we could write in any of these languages that is supported by the blockchain, Hyperledger Fabric blockchain. So we could write a chain code over there, and simply we could use different things with us. So here I could use anything. Suppose I'm registering a user, right? And then I could pass the Aadhaar card number, person with disabilities, no password. I could choose anything. And then I would hit on this registration. Simply, like, there are a lot of things that are happening in the background. and then I could take a login as well through this portal. So this is like how you are going to build a dApp. That is entirely up to you. So these UI things and the business logic, that would be of course handled by you guys, because you would be the one who would be deciding the logic behind the system which you are developing. So this is how things, or this is how these different DL unified tools could be used. So just to summarize, like all the things which you have discussed. So for launching or spawning up a network, you are going to use this DL orchestrator tool. And then we have DL gateway. So DL gateway is simply responsible for putting up your business logic or putting up your chain code or the smart contract on the system, so that you could provide a tool, or you could build a pipeline that would enable you to do transactions on the network. And then here is one more thing. So DL Fabric Explorer is there. So it is responsible for, if you have initiated some transaction on the network and you want to see that what kind of transaction was happened in that particular way. So here you could see all those things. So here are the channels that are present inside our network. So I'm walking across the success channel, and here you could see like all the transactions which we did on the network, right? And then there are other details that are essential for the user. So the location of the system which we are having, the certificate authority and its detail. So this is all it now. So thanks for joining in. So this was all about DL Unify and its tool. Now, Mac, you can take it as forward.
Thanks everyone for joining. So Deepak, thanks man, thanks for the session. So guys, we will be taking a quick lunch break, and we will be joining back at 3 p.m. today. So during the 3 p.m. sessions, we will be accompanied by Mr. Purushottam Chowdhury and Ayusha Chitrans, and they would be speaking about building the Ethereum dApps using DL Unify. Right now, you have seen what dApps can be built using DL Unify using Hyperledger. So the same will happen for the Ethereum. So we'll circle back at 3. Please don't forget to join by 3 p.m. So the session will go for 1 more hour. So we'll do that. Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining.
Everyone.